The house on Maple Street had been empty for 3 years. Lucas' heart stood in the overgrown driveway, his truck engine ticking as it cooled, and studied the sagging porch. Paint peeled from the siding like old skin. The gutters hung at odd angles, clogged with years of leaves. Most contractors would have walked away from a job like this. Too much work, too little profit. But Lucas wasn't most contractors. He was a single dad trying to fill the hollow spaces in his life with sawdust and sweat. And houses like this one didn't judge him for the days he forgot to pack his daughter's lunch or the nights he sat alone in his truck, unable to walk into his own front door. The lawyer handling the estate had been clear on the phone. The owner passed away. No family, no heirs. Everything gets sold as is. The estate just needs it habitable enough to list. You got 6 weeks and a fixed budget. Can you do it? Lucas had said yes before asking any questions. That was 4 days ago. Now, standing in the late September cold, he wondered what kind of person had lived here. What kind of life had unfolded behind those dusty windows? He'd renovated dozens of houses since. Rachel died, each one a temporary distraction from the permanent ache. But something about this place felt different. He grabbed his toolbox from the truck bed and headed for the front door, the key stuck in the lock, reluctant after years of disuse. When the door finally opened, the smell hit him first, old wood, dust, and something else. Not decay exactly, but absence. The specific scent of a place where life had simply stopped. The interior was frozen in time. A coffee mug sat on the kitchen counter, a dark ring of residue at the bottom. Mail lay scattered on a small table by the door, catalogs, bills, a postcard from someone's vacation. The furniture was modest but well-kept. A worn armchair positioned near the window, a bookshelf crammed with paperbacks, photographs in mismatched frames covering nearly every surface. Lucas moved through the room slowly, taking inventory. The roof would need patching. The bathroom fixtures were ancient. The hardwood floors were solid but scratched and dull. It was all manageable. He'd dealt with worse. He was measuring the kitchen windows when he noticed the photographs more closely. They showed a woman, alone in most of them, at the Grand Canyon, squinting into the sun, on a pier somewhere, holding an ice cream cone, in a garden, kneeling among tomato plants. She looked to be in her 60s or 70s, with silver hair and an expression that seemed perpetually caught between sadness and determination. There were no photos of children, no wedding pictures, no images of family gatherings or holiday celebrations. Just this woman, documenting a life lived in solitude. Lucas felt an unexpected kinship with her. He understood loneliness, the kind that didn't announce itself but settled into your bones like winter cold. He spent the first week on the exterior, patching the roof, replacing rotted boards, clearing the jungle that had once been a yard. His daughter Mia, who was 7 and had inherited her mother's curiosity, came by after school most days. She'd explore the property while he worked, narrating adventures to herself about secret gardens and hidden treasures. "Dad, why didn't the lady have any kids?" Mia asked one afternoon, studying the photographs. Through the window, Lucas hammered in a nail before answering. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe she did and they just didn't visit much. Or maybe she chose not to. That's sad. Maybe, or maybe she was happy. Were you happy before you had me?" The question landed like a gut punch. Lucas set down his hammer and climbed off the ladder. He knelt in front of his daughter, brushing sawdust from her jacket. "I thought I was," he said carefully, "but I didn't know what happy really was until you were born. You and your mom, you taught me that." Mia nodded solemnly, processing this. Then, with the lightning-fast mood shift of childhood, she was off again, chasing a butterfly across the newly cleared lawn. Lucas watched her go, his throat tight. Rachel had been gone for 2 years now. Cancer, swift and merciless. Some days felt almost normal. Other days, the grief would tackle him without warning. In the grocery store, at parent-teacher conferences, in the shower at 2 a.m. when Mia was asleep and there was no reason to hold it together. The houses helped. Each renovation was a puzzle with a solution, a problem he could actually fix, unlike everything else in his life. By the second week, Lucas had moved inside. He started in the bedroom, where water damage had left stains across the ceiling. While removing old insulation from the attic, his hand brushed against something solid tucked between the joists. A wooden box, about the size of a shoebox, wrapped in a plastic bag. He brought it down and set it on the bedroom floor. Curious, the box wasn't locked. Inside, he found a stack of letters bound with string, some old jewelry, a few black and white photographs, and a leather journal with a broken clasp. Lucas hesitated. This felt private, sacred, even, but the woman was gone. No family, the lawyer had said, no one to care about these remnants of her life. He opened the journal. The first entry was dated March 15th, 1983. Dr. Morrison says writing might help. I don't see how putting words on paper would change anything, but I suppose it can't hurt. Thomas left 6 months ago. The house feels too big now, too quiet. I always thought we'd grow old here together, but I guess that's not how the story goes. So here I am, learning to be alone, learning to be enough all by myself. Lucas flipped through the pages. Years of entries, some brief, others spanning multiple pages. The woman, whose name was Evelyn, he learned, had indeed been alone. Her husband had left her for someone younger. Her parents had passed away. She'd never had children, though not by choice. The entries painted a picture of profound loneliness, but also of resilience. Evelyn had worked as a librarian. She'd traveled when she could afford it. She'd filled her days with small routines and quiet pleasures. Morning coffee on the porch, mystery novels, tending her garden, feeding the stray cats that wandered through her yard. Lucas found himself reading late into the evening, long after he should have headed home. There was something hypnotic about witnessing a life unfold in retrospect, seeing the shape of it from beginning to end. He was near the final pages when a date caught his eye. October 7th, 2023. His vision blurred. His hand started shaking. That was the day Rachel died. Something strange happened today. Evelyn had written, I was in the garden this morning when I felt, I don't know how to describe it, a presence, a warmth. For just a moment, I wasn't alone. I looked up, and I could swear I saw a woman standing by the fence, young with dark hair and the kindest eyes. She was smiling at me, not a pitying smile, but something else. Understanding, maybe. When I blinked, she was gone. The doctor says my heart is failing. Maybe my mind is too, but I don't think I imagined her. I think she was real. I think she came to tell me something important, that the loneliness doesn't have to win, that even now at the end, I'm not truly alone. Wherever we go next, we're connected. All of us, every person who's ever felt, lost or broken or afraid, we're all reaching for the same light. I think I'm ready now. I think. The entry ended mid-sentence. It was the last thing Evelyn had written. Lucas closed the journal with trembling hands. The date couldn't be a coincidence. October 7th, 2023. The worst day of his life. And somehow, this stranger had been experiencing, what? A vision? A hallucination? A genuine encounter with something beyond explanation? Lucas didn't believe in ghosts or angels or any of that. Rachel was gone, dead. He'd held her hand as she slipped away, felt her final breath, attended her funeral, and spread her ashes in the lake where they'd had their first date. And yet, the description in Evelyn's diary, young with dark hair and the kindest eyes, that was Rachel. Lucas sat on the dusty bedroom floor until the light faded and the house grew cold around him. He thought about Rachel in her final days, drifting in and out of consciousness, sometimes, speaking to people who weren't there. He'd assumed it was the morphine, the brain shutting down in stages. But what if she'd been somewhere else? Somewhere between this world and the next, wandering through other people's lives, offering comfort she couldn't give her own family. The idea was absurd. It was also strangely comforting. He took the journal home that night, which he knew he shouldn't. It wasn't his to take, but he needed to understand. He needed to know if this connection, this impossible, inexplicable connection, meant something. Mia was already asleep when he got home. His mother-in-law, who helped with childcare, had left dinner in the fridge with a note about Mia's spelling test. Lucas heated up the food without tasting it and sat at the kitchen table, reading the journal again from the beginning. Evelyn's loneliness was different from his own, but no less profound. She'd built a life from scraps, from the pieces left after everything she'd hoped for had crumbled. She'd never remarried, never stopped missing Thomas, even after he betrayed her, never stopped wondering what motherhood might have been like, but she'd also never given up. That was a thread running through every entry. Determination to keep going, to find meaning in small things, to believe that her life mattered even when there was no one around to witness it. Lucas recognized himself in those pages. The way he threw himself into work. The way he focused on Mia, on being present for her, because if he stopped moving he might drown in the grief. The way he avoided other people's sympathy, because it made Rachel's absence feel more real. He'd been renovating houses as a form of survival, turning other people's neglected spaces into something clean and functional and new. But what about his own life? When would he stop just surviving and start actually living again? The question kept him awake long into the night. Over the next week, Lucas worked with renewed purpose. He refinished the floors in Evelyn's house, bringing out the warm honey color of the original wood. He updated the kitchen with simple white cabinets and new countertops, keeping the layout the same because he suspected Evelyn had liked it that way. He repaired the windows, replaced the light fixtures, and painted the walls in soft, neutral tones. The house transformed under his hands. But more importantly, something was transforming in him. He started talking to Evelyn as he worked, not out loud, but in his head, telling her about his day, about Mia's latest obsession with dinosaurs, about the memories of Rachel that still ambushed him at random moments. It felt less lonely somehow, imagining that this woman who'd spent so much of her life alone might be listening. Mia noticed a change. "You seem different, Dad," she said one afternoon. They were sitting on Evelyn's newly repaired porch, sharing a bag of chips. "Different how?" "I don't know. Less sad, maybe." Lucas pulled her close. "I'm still sad sometimes, sweetheart. I'll probably always be a little sad about Mom. But I think I'm also learning how to be happy again. Does that make sense?" "Yeah." She leaned against him. "Do you think Mom would like this house?" "I think she'd love it." "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink lower. The yard, now cleared and maintained, looked almost welcoming. Lucas could imagine Evelyn out there, tending her tomatoes, feeding her cats, finding contentment in the simple rhythm of seasons. He could also imagine building a life like that for himself and Mia, not isolated, but peaceful, not running from grief, but making space for it alongside everything else, joy, hope, new possibilities. On the final day of the renovation, Lucas did something he hadn't planned. He took one of the photographs from Evelyn's collection, the one of her in the garden, smiling, despite everything, and had it framed. He hung it in the kitchen, above the spot where she'd probably had her morning coffee. Then he wrote a note and left it on the counter for whoever bought the house. The woman who lived here was named Evelyn. She lived alone, but she wasn't lonely, not really. She built a beautiful life from difficult circumstances. I think she'd want whoever comes next to know that this house has been loved, and it deserves to be loved again. Please take care of it, and take care of yourselves. L.H. He also kept the journal. That probably made him a thief, but he couldn't bring himself to leave. It felt like Evelyn had meant for him to find it, meant for him to read those final words about Rachel, or whoever that figure had been in her garden that October morning. Some mysteries didn't need solving. Some connections defied explanation, and maybe that was okay. Three weeks after finishing the renovation, Lucas got a call from the lawyer handling Evelyn's estate. The house sold in 2 days, the woman said. Multiple offers. The buyers were a young couple, first-time homeowners. They love what you did with the place. They also asked me to thank you for the note and the photograph. They said it made them feel like they were becoming part of a story, not just buying a house. Lucas felt his throat tighten. I'm glad. There's something else. The lawyer paused. When we were finalizing estate paperwork, we found an oval in Evelyn's safety deposit box. It predates the one we've been working from. In it, she left instructions that if she died alone, a portion of her estate should go to funding grief, counseling for widows and widowers in the community. It's not a huge amount, but it's enough to help a few people every year. Lucas closed his eyes. Of course Evelyn would do something like that. Of course she'd think about others, even in death. The foundation administering the fund asked if I knew anyone who might benefit from their services. The lawyer continued carefully. I'm not trying to overstep, but if you or anyone you know might need support. Thank you, Lucas interrupted gently. I'll think about it. After they hung up, he sat in his truck for a long time, staring at nothing. He'd been so focused on being strong for Mia, on keeping it together, on pushing through the pain like it was just another renovation project. But grief wasn't something you could fix with a hammer and nails. It required different tools: vulnerability, community, the willingness to admit that you couldn't carry everything alone. Evelyn had learned that lesson too late, building walls to protect herself from further hurt. But she'd also tried, in her own quiet way, to make sure others didn't make the same mistake. That evening, Lucas sat Mia down for a talk. What would you think if Dad started going to a group? He asked. A place where people talk about missing someone they loved. Mia considered this seriously. Would it make you feel better? I think it might. Then you should go. She climbed into his lap. It's okay to be sad, Dad. Mom used to say that feelings are like weather. They come and go, but they're all part of being alive. Lucas felt tears prick his eyes. Rachel had said that. He'd forgotten. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart, Mia said matter-of-factly. You just don't always notice. He laughed, the sound surprising him. Real laughter, the kind that came from joy rather than politeness. Maybe that was what healing looked like. Not the absence of pain, but the gradual return of other feelings alongside it. Not forgetting Rachel, but learning to hold her memory gently while also reaching for new experiences, new connections, new chapters. Lucas started attending the grief support group that Evelyn's fund had helped establish. It met Tuesday evenings in a church basement, a dozen people sitting in a circle, sharing stories about the ones they'd lost. At first, he just listened. Then, slowly, he started to talk about Rachel, about the guilt he carried for feeling relieved when she finally died because it meant she wasn't suffering anymore, about the anger that still flared up at random moments, at the cancer, at the universe, at Rachel herself for leaving him alone with all this responsibility, about the terror of forgetting, of waking up one morning and not being able to remember the exact sound of her laugh or the way she hummed off-key while cooking dinner. The others understood. They'd all been where he was, feeling their way through the same dark tunnel, and gradually, imperceptibly, the darkness began to lift. Not completely. Grief didn't work that way, but enough that Lucas could see light ahead, could imagine emerging on the other side, changed but intact. 6 months after finishing Evelyn's house, Lucas drove past it on his way to pick up supplies. The new owners had planted flowers in the front yard, bright bursts of color that would have made Evelyn smile. Children's toys littered the porch. A tire swing hung from the old oak tree. The house was alive again. He thought about Evelyn in her garden, seeing Rachel or someone who looked like her on that October morning. He thought about the strange mathematics of grief and loss, the way pain could sometimes create connections across impossible distances. He didn't know if Rachel had really been there, offering comfort to a dying stranger. He didn't know if Evelyn's vision had been real or just a final dream of a failing brain. But he knew this. Love didn't end when someone died. It transformed. It rippled outward in unexpected ways, touching lives that would never intersect in the ordinary course of things. Evelyn's loneliness had led her to leave a legacy of healing. Rachel's death had led him to Evelyn's story. Evelyn's story had led him to finally confront his own pain instead of just building walls around it. Everything was connected. Everyone was reaching for the same light. Lucas pulled into the hardware store parking lot and sat for a moment, letting the realization settle. He'd started renovating houses to fill the emptiness, but what he'd really been doing was learning to renovate himself, to strip away the damaged parts, shore up the foundations, and slowly, carefully, build something new from what remained. It wasn't finished. Maybe it would never be finished. But he was learning to live in the house of his grief without letting it collapse around him, learning to open the windows, letting fresh air make room for new growth. That night, after tucking me into bed, Lucas pulled out Evelyn's journal one last time. He turned to the final entry, reading those incomplete sentences about connection and light. Then he picked up a pen and began to write his own entry on the blank pages that followed. Dear Evelyn, you don't know me, but I've gotten to know you through your words. I renovated your house, but really, you renovated me. You showed me that loneliness doesn't have to mean despair, that a life can be small and quiet and still full of meaning, that even at the end, we're all connected by the same hopes and fears and questions. I lost my wife 2 years ago, the same day you wrote your last entry. I don't know what that means, if it means anything at all, but I choose to believe that somewhere, in some way I don't understand, Rachel found you that morning, that she was able to offer comfort even when she couldn't stay with me and our daughter. Thank you for leaving this journal where I could find it. Thank you for your honesty, your resilience, your refusal to let bitterness define you. I'm going to try to live the way you did. Finding meaning in small, so I'm working on it. Thank you for showing me how. Lucas closed the journal and placed it on the shelf next to photographs of Rachel he kept in his bedroom. Two strangers who'd never met, but whose lives had intersected in the most unexpected way. Tomorrow, he'd start a new renovation project. Another abandoned house, another puzzle to solve. But tonight, he was exactly where he needed to be, home, with his daughter asleep down the hall, finally learning to inhabit his own life instead of just surviving it. The house on Maple Street had given him more than a paycheck. It had given him permission to heal. So where are you watching this from tonight? Maybe you're curled up in bed, scrolling before sleep. Maybe you're taking a break from your own repairs, the kind that can't be fixed with tools. Wherever you are, whatever you're carrying, I hope this story reminded you that healing isn't linear, that connection can come from the most unexpected places, and that the spaces we tend, whether they're houses or hearts, deserve patience and care. What did this story make you feel? Did it remind you of someone you've lost? Did it give you hope that the heavy weight you're carrying might someday feel a little lighter? What lesson are you taking with you? Drop it in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you pause and think or feel something real, hit that like button and subscribe. Every single dad out there, every person learning to rebuild from broken pieces, they all have stories worth telling. And I'll be here every week sharing them with you because we're all renovating something. And none of us have to do it alone.